Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening. If you have the Art Scroll Synagogue, you can turn to page 546. We're doing selections from the Pirkei Avos, so the Ethics of Our Fathers. 546, chapter 1, Mishnah 6. Yeah, okay. Yeshua ben Prachia, Nitar Arbeli Kibul Mehem. Yeshua ben Prachia and the spell Nitar Arbeli received the tradition from their rabbis. Yeshua ben Prachia Omer. Yeshua ben Prachia says the following. Asay lechorav. It's very important that you have to have a rabbi. You have to have a teacher, one who introduce you to Torah studies, first Chumash, and then Mishnah, and the Gemara, and so on. So you must have some Rebbe to guide you. Excuse me. And acquire a friend. Very important to have someone to socialize with and to discuss things with. Now, chover, that word, I always like what the little play on the letters. If you take this, the chover has 3 letters. Chet, et, resh. If you just transpose the letters to bet, chet, resh, but bet, chet, resh is bechar. Bechar means choose. Choose yourself. Choose for yourself a friend. If he's a good friend, using those same letters, different order, resh, chet, beis, rochab, rochab. Widen your relations with such a person. It's hard to find a real good friend. However, sometimes we make mistakes. We think that we picked the wrong friend, and we find that friend might double cross you. So, if that's the case, if that he's like a chet, resh, bet, a chereb. He's like a sword on your side. He's not treating you like a friend should. So what should you do in that case? Again, using those same letters, bet, resh, chet, barach. Flee, run away from such a person. You don't need a person like that if you find out that he's not a good friend. Okay, but the beauty of this is that using those same 3 letters to tell this little story. We have a don as kol hadam the kapsachus. And when it comes to judging a person, always give the person the benefit of the doubt. Always judge them favorably. Yeah. Now, do you know who was an infamous student of Yeshua ben Prachia? You know? It was Jesus. Yeshu, we call him. Yeshu was his student, really, seriously. Yeshu learned under Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia. Unfortunately, he went a different way. He broke away from some of the teachings. So that's why, according to some, that's why the last statement that Yeshua ben Prachia says, as called judge every man favorably, give him the benefit of the doubt. We don't know. You don't know the whole situation. We shouldn't right away judge a person and say, oh, he's a terrible person, because we don't know all the facts. So he was saying, when it comes to judging others, make sure we try to judge the person in a favorable way. Unless the only exception is that you know this person is an evildoer. Then, of course, you could judge him in an unfavorable way. Okay? Next Mishnah 7. Basic principles over here. Nitar Abeli, Omer. Nitar Abeli said the following: Harchek mishochin ra. Distance yourself from a bad neighbor. Now, where do we find in the Torah where because somebody resided next to a bad friend, a bad neighbor, he joined with this bad neighbor? You look last week's Parsha. Korach. Korach was from the tribe of Levi. Now, where he resided on the side of him was the tribe of Ruvain. And who was there? Onan Pelas. There was other people who joined him from the tribe of Ruvain. Or all the people that were surrounding Korach, wherever he resided in the tribe of Levi, because he was so close to others, he really was a bad neighbor. And that's why over here it says, be very distance yourself, be shocking mouth from a bad neighbor, because look what happened to some of the followers of Korach were the ones who lived in his neighborhood. They were next to his tribe, and he was able to influence them against Moshe Rabbeinu. If you remember, like last week, he wanted he complained to Moshe Rabbeinu that Moshe, you're the leader, and you've now appointed Aaron to be the high priest and so on, and he assumed that Moshe did it on his own free will, which was not true. It really, Moshe did everything up to Hashem, God told him to do. But okay, that's why over here, Rabbi is saying, if you know someone's a bad neighbor, move away from that person. And don't join to an evil doer. Don't become friends with an evil person. Now, now sometimes you see people who are not doing well, they're evil, they have an ill repute, and sometimes you see that they are successful. Everything that they do, they happen to be successful. So therefore, Nita Rabel is saying, don't assume because these evil people are successful and whether it's financially or otherwise, they're doing very well for themselves, don't assume that it's going to be okay. Because don't give up on Punios, because eventually they'll be punished for what they have done. You might not see it right away, but it could be years from that point, they will be held responsible and they will have to pay the consequences. And there's the Gemara in the Goyim says the following, the expression I think you might have heard. It says, Oi, Russia, Oi, woe to the Russia, woe to the evildoer, and woe to his neighbor. Okay, because of the influence. Yeah. Now, if you notice, it's a couple of months we have the Hebrew month of Elul. Now it's an acronym for 4 words.
I need a dog.
Right. I need a dog. We have the I am to my beloved. The beloved is God. And my beloved is to me. We have to link up with Hashem and realize there will be a day of reckoning. And even though we see some of the evildoers prosper and seem to be everything they do seems to be great, nevertheless we have to have that confidence in God that eventually the evildoers will be punished for what they had done. Okay. Okay. Mishnah Chet. What does the Mishnah say? Yehuda ben Tabai, B'Shima B'Shata Kibul Man. So we have the next generation of leaders. And remember, I think I mentioned the first one that is mentioned is always the Nasi, the prince or the head of the court, and the second one is the Abbitin, second in command. Okay. So Yehuda ben Tabi and Shimon Shekach received the tradition from their rabbis. Yehuda ben Tabi Omer. Yehuda ben Tabi said the following: Al tas atzmachok orchi hadayonim. Do not make yourself. Let me see how he translates what I've done. Do not act as a lawyer. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's interesting, we have a Sanhedrin, we have a court system. There's no such a thing as lawyers in the Sanhedrin, the court system that we know from the Torah. Who does all the questioning? Who questions the litigants? Who questions them? The judges. The judges do all the questioning. Yeah, no lawyers. And that's why the Mishnah says.
When you say the judges, you mean all the rabbi, all the people in the Sanhedrin. Everyone is a judge there, right?
Right, but there were no lawyers who will go ahead and defend the or whatever it may be, defend the litigant or whatever the problem was. No such thing as lawyers. The judges asked all the questions. And also another thing is, not like in our system, when you're a witness or a litigant, you sit when you testify. In the court system, in our court system, whoever testifies stands before the judges, and they question the litigants or witnesses, whatever it may be. They do all the questioning. Okay, now, oh, yeah, Yehuda ben Tabais Omer. So he says, first, he's not talking to the judges, but he's saying any person should not go ahead and tell the litigants, well, if the judges ask you this thing, say this way, answer it this way, or give this type of an answer. We're not allowed to do it. The judges can't do that either. You cannot go ahead before the court session, to tell the people, I'm going to ask this type of question, and this is the way you shall answer it, and maybe you'll be exonerated from it, from the problem. You can't do that. So lawyers nothing to do with the court system, and at least in the Sanhedrin or the Jewish court. Now, and when you have the litigants standing before, and as I mentioned before, whether you're a witness, whether you're one of the litigants, you stood when you gave testimony. You did not stand like we have in our court system. And when they stand before you, you look at all of them as if they're guilty. Don't take sides yet. However, after you question them and the decision of the court is given by the judges, well, whatever it may be, justice has been done, and everything is clear now. And if the person is guilty, has to, whatever it may be, has to be paid up, or whatever the problem was. Or if we're talking about a criminal case, he might be, under certain conditions, he might be sentenced to death. Now, let me skip the Smith. Where is it? Yeah. Now, the Mishnah brings down that there are 7 basic questions, especially when it comes to criminal law, that must be asked, and they have to have answers. The witnesses also, when they answer it, both of them must answer the same thing, or else it's not considered testimony. It's thrown out. The 7 basic questions. And the Mishnah says the following: this is talking about criminal law. There are 7 questions that the court asks the witnesses. First of all, the Be'ez Shavua. Now, we know about the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year, right? And it's coming this Rosh Hashanah. We'll start the sabbatical year when you cannot plow, when you cannot sow, you cannot do any work pertaining to the earth. Okay, so there's 7 Shemitah years, 49 years that are counted. In fact, the court does it. And the 50th year, then you have the Jubilee year. Well, that's which we don't do today, but we do the Shemitah year, at least on a rabbinical level in Israel, like I mentioned, I think last time. Rosh Hashanah will start the sabbatical year. So now, so you have 7 sabbatical years. So they'll ask them, which sabbatical year did you see this particular crime? Was it the first one? In other words, have to be within the first 7 years, or the second one within from year 8 to year 14, and so on. Which number? What sabbatical year was it? Be'ez Shana, what year? The year was. That's the second question. Be'ez Chodesh, what month was it? How many days in that month? The next question, Be'ez Yom, what day was it? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, which day was it? Be'ez Sha'ah, what hour? And finally, Be'ez Makom, what place? These were 7 basic questions that they asked, especially when it came to criminal law. Now, if for some reason the witnesses contradict each other, by the way, the witnesses are not present when one testifies, so they don't know what the the first witness might have said. So they don't know. So they come in separately. Each witness comes in separately, and these 7 questions are posed to the witnesses. So if their testimony and these 7 questions coincide, and both witnesses agree, then okay, then we can proceed. But if they contradict one another, it's thrown out. If one guy says it happened on Tuesday, another guy says, "Oh no, it happened on Thursday," forget it, or whatever. It's a different year, it's a different month. You have to be precise. We cannot go ahead and convict somebody because one says one day and one says another day. It has to be exactly right. Rabbi Yossi disagrees with the 7. He says there has to be only 3, but that's the halacha is not like him.
How do you know someone's not lying?
Well, that's why you have 2 witnesses. If for some reason the second witness says different than the first witness, it's thrown out. Let's say the one guy says, "Oh, I remember it happened on January, in the month of January." Another guy says, "What? It happened when he was testifying. He said it happened in February." So that's no good.
But wait a second, let's say there's a guy commits a crime and one guy is his friend who lies and the other guy isn't his friend and he tells the truth.
Wait. But I mean, they each say something different, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even so, let's assume one is really telling the truth, and the other guy's lying. We don't know. But if it's not the same, if witness 1 says the crime happened on a Monday, witness 2 said it happened on the Tuesday, goodbye. It's thrown out of court. These are very important questions. If you don't know the exact day it was, that time it was,
It says I don't remember.
Yeah. What? Excuse me?
It says I don't remember.
Well, that's the difference. Again, so let's say guy says, "I don't remember" on one of these questions. And the other guy said it happened on the Tuesday. Also thrown out. You must have 2 witnesses to convict the person. Especially if we're talking about criminal law. If one guy says, "I don't know, I forgot." The other guy said it was Tuesday, thrown out. You must have 2 witnesses, at least 2. So if you have 3 witnesses and 2 said the same thing, one didn't, then it could be it's okay, we accept it. But I'm talking about a simple case. We only have 2 witnesses. Okay?
But what if they find him with all the proof of the crime and then they say, I don't remember, and he didn't have 2 witnesses. One lie.
Man is exonerated. If those people, let's say they ask these questions, they both say, "I don't know." They say, "I don't know either. I don't remember." Well, I don't remember. He's released, exonerated. You can't convict him. Unless, this is the thing, unless maybe a month later you have 2 other witnesses who came, maybe they were out of town or whatever it was, and they came back from a business trip and they saw the crime and they're questioned, then it's, even then, I don't know if they're allowed to, because I think that's double jeopardy. I don't think once the court exonerates a person, they cannot go ahead and make it guilty. I think that's what the halacha is. So even if 5 months later, 2 witnesses said they saw the crime, too late. You've been exonerated from the court the first time. What's that? Double jeopardy, right? So that you can't.
Double jeopardy.
Now they find out witnesses, just because witnesses say they saw it the way it is, it's not always right.
Look, obviously the judges really examine the witnesses and cross-examine them and make sure that they're telling the truth. Now, what do you do in the courts? It's the same thing. But we don't have a jury. That I'll tell you. So the same thing over there. How does the jury know if this guy said right, if this guy lied, did not lie? You have to hear the evidence of what you think is. If you think it's right, it's acceptable. If not, it's thrown out. Yeah. But anyway, whatever is said, you have to have at least 2 witnesses saying the same thing. So if possible, a person can get off. Really, he's guilty, and he'll get off. If one witness said it happened on Tuesday, witness 2 said it happened on a Wednesday, fine. It's no good. Out it goes. He's exonerated. And it's very possible that he did commit the crime, but we believe that then it's in the hands of God. Yeah. Okay. Rabbi Yossi Omer, what Rabbi Yossi says, there's only 3 questions. We read the halachas like the first opinion. Eze Yom, I don't know what the day is. Eze Shua, an exact hour. Be'ezim makom, and where the place is. Oh, by the way, the Gemara does speak about it. You remember, most people, I don't think they had clocks then. So if they're off, let's say by a couple of minutes, that's okay. Let's say the guy says, "Oh, I think it happened 7:45," and the guy said, "I think it happened 7:40." Well, that's okay. They'll accept that because, especially in those days, they didn't really have clocks or whatever it was. If it's off by a minute or two, that's okay. But if one says it happened at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, another guy says, "What do you mean? It happened at night at 8 o'clock?" It's thrown out. You know. Okay, there are other questions also that the Gemara talks about that someone to extremes, but I don't think halacha is like that. There was a judge one time that asked one of the witnesses, what color was his shirt? What color was his coat? When this crime happened. So I don't know. I don't think we posting like that. This is one of the opinion where if one said, "Oh, we had a brown suit on," and the other says, "No, we had a black suit on." Some say even that they went to an extreme where they said even that could be exonerated. But I don't think that's the halacha. I got to check it. I don't think so. But the Gemara talks about all these type of things. Okay.
One more question.
Yeah.
But do the judges do the investigation before they before they examine the witness, or
I don't think so. First of all, how many judges must you have for criminal law?
123. What?
No.
70.
For monetary cases, 3 judges. For criminal law, 23 judges. Remember, just judges, no lawyers. If for some reason, if they cannot, let's say the judge, they could not come to a decision. They're not certain with the testimony and all this. They don't know. So what happens then? It's brought to the Beit Gadol, the Supreme Court of 71 judges, and they have to find a solution. And that's in anything. If the lower courts cannot answer, they just don't know the answer to the problem, it's brought up to the highest court, finally to the Supreme Court, which we call the Beit Gadol or Sanhedrin. It's a Greek word meaning the Supreme Court of Israel. No, that's a lot. There's 71 judges, and you have to have. And when they vote, it has to be the majority of the judges will say that he's guilty, and then he'll be well, depends upon what the case is. He'll get a particular punishment. If the opposite, the majority of someone judges says he's innocent, he's not charged, then of course he's released. You might say, well, maybe they made a mistake. Maybe he really did do a crime. So then it's in the hands of God. Yeah. And by the way, what about prisons? The person is like just incarcerated while the trial is still going on. It might last more than one day, like anything else. So he's incarcerated for that period of time. But once he's exonerated, then of course he's released from the prison. There was some sort of a prison in those days, not that like the prison system that we have today in the United States, but they did have some sort of a prison. And we find also, if you recall, what was that Parsha, where a man went ahead in the Torah and chopped wood on Shabbat, and they didn't know what to do with this person. What is his punishment?
They stoned him.
What? Yeah, but eventually God told him what to do because they didn't know. At that point, remember, throughout the 40 years, they were still learning some of the rules of the Torah. You're right, and then it says they stoned that particular person because he did it purposely, knowingly, and it's a Shabbat, and he was sentenced to death. Yeah. Okay. This is really the discussion here. We have a whole tractate called Sanhedrin, the tractate of the Supreme Court, dealing with the Supreme Court. Oh, another thing, this is why it's so difficult to sentence anybody to death. Let's assume a crime did happen. Let's assume Mr. A killed Mr. B. And two witnesses were there. And they say they saw the whole thing. But one question the court has to ask, did you warn the person? Did you warn Mr. A that if you're going to kill him, you're going to be sentenced to death? Oh, they said, no, we didn't warn him. We forgot. He's exonerated. It's amazing. It's so difficult, extremely difficult to have any person sentenced to death during the days of the Sanhedrin. It's impossible. Yeah, and not only that, the witnesses who saw it has to warn him. Remember, you cannot killing is against the Torah, and if you don't, and if you're going to do it, you'll be sentenced to death. And the criminal has to. I don't care. Even though you said, "Tell me, I'm doing it anyway," has to accept the warning. So that's what Gemara Machos brings down, that if a court ever sentenced anyone to death once in 7 years, they would call the court a murderer, so to speak, because it was so difficult to sentence anyone to death in the time of the Sanhedrin. It's very hard. You have to warn the person, and they say, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. Very difficult. Okay. We're on. Oh, yeah. But yeah, the one of the questions also, did you want it? Okay. Okay. Let me go further. Where are we now? Yeah, so again, the Mishnah 9. Shimon et Shatach Omer. I'm up to that. Did I finish Mishnah 8? I don't remember. Where was I? Oh no, I didn't do the end of the Mishnah 8. So yeah, we Mishnah 8 says, don't be like a lawyer. Like I mentioned to you, the lawyers who did not exist at the time of the Sanhedrin, the judges do all the questioning. Okay. Because when the litigants are standing before you, consider them their equal. Maybe they're both evildoers. We're talking about the criminal law. But once the decision of basin is made, okay, whatever the verdict is, now both are innocent. I mean, obviously, so about monetary cases, both can be innocent, but they have to pay up, whatever it will be, and they accepted the judgment of the court. Where are we? Shimon Shatach, the Mishnah said, really makes another comment. And even when you're having a case in the court, ask a lot of questions and cross-examine all the witnesses to make certain that they're both telling the truth. You don't want to sentence someone to death when he's really innocent. Maybe they're lying, these witnesses. Maybe they don't like that fellow. Maybe. So even though they might be saying the same testimony, maybe they made it all up between themselves. They made up but they must made up between themselves what they will answer on these questions. Okay, so therefore it says to be careful, ask a lot of questions, not just the 7 basic ones. So make sure that the man is guilty. He really is guilty. You don't want to kill somebody who's innocent. This I think is an obvious thing also. And be very careful as a judge. Be very careful. Don't say something that the witnesses will understand that they'll be able to lie, and maybe the judges will be misled. You have to be very careful how you pose the questions. Talking about the judges, but you pose the question. Don't say, "Oh, maybe the situation happened this way," and the guy says, "Oh, yeah, that's how it happened." You can't do those things. You have to be very careful how you cross-examine the witnesses. That you shouldn't ask the question that through that the witness or the litigants will go ahead and be able to lie about something and they'll get away with it. So it was really very difficult to be a judge and be very extremely careful how you pose the questions. Yeah. And even the selection of judges, it wasn't easy to be a judge. Besides the Sanhedrin, you had, I said, 71 judges, the judges who asked questions and so on, decided what the verdict is. But in front of them were 3 rows of like student judges, people learning from the court case how you become a judge, how you're supposed to present it, how you're supposed to question. And there was like 3 rows of student judges. They did not vote or something, but they learned how to become a judge just in case one judge was absent and one judge died. So they'll go ahead and pick the first judge on the first row, on row one, seat one, and he'd become the judge of the Supreme Court, and everybody moves up one. And they'll take somebody on the outside to sit in the last row, last seat, something like that. That's the way it worked. It was a very interesting system that they had. And then it says, okay, now Mishnah 9. Shimon ben Shatach Omer. Shimon ben Shatach said the following: Avimar belakorasi. I think we have mentioned this, that when you interrogate them, do it, ask them many questions, make certain that they are either the person was innocent or guilty, whatever it may be. Be careful how you present your questions. Because you don't not cautious enough, the litigants or the witnesses will go ahead and say, "Oh, he said the way the judge phrased his question. I think I could go ahead and answer the question, not really with the complete truth." Okay. Now the Mishnah 10. Oh yeah. Maya v'Avtal Yom Kibumem. These were the two leaders after Shimon Meshach, after the previous Mishnah. These were the two leaders, Shmaya v'Avtal Yom. And by the way, Shmaya and Avtal Yom were converts to Judaism. It's amazing how here they are converts and they become the head of the Sanhedrin. Okay. Shmaya Omer. Shmaya says, like work. Sometimes you just don't sit idly by. You must do something. Now it says hate. It doesn't. When you translate it literally, it means hate the rabbinate, the rabbinate. But it really doesn't mean that. It means that a person should not really want to be head of a court, because a lot of the responsibility is so great, and you say the wrong thing, you can be criticized and so on. You got to be very careful. Also, don't become a politician. We find that the problems, even in the time of the Sanhedrin, in the time of the Second Holy Temple, some of the rabbis were very close with the Romans, or something they had to in order to avoid evil decrees. But on the other hand, they got to be careful, because if they want to find favor in the eyes of the Romans, maybe they go ahead and they will not give the proper answer to whatever the case might have been, because they wanted to please the Romans. So it's a very difficult time when the Romans were in control of Israel, and if you remember the Tisha B'Av case, where was it Kamsa Bakamsa? Yeah, where this fellow Kamsa was thrown out of Bar Kamsa's house. He didn't like one another, and when one of the messengers invited him, he made a mistake, and he invited the wrong person, and that was the enemy of the host. And he got so angry that he went ahead and snitched to the Romans and said that the Jews are rebelling against you. We learned this, and the Romans authorities said, "How do you know that? Give me a sacrifice, an animal for a sacrifice. Well, let's see if he'll go ahead and offer it in the Holy Temple." And if you remember what he did, this fellow went ahead and put a blemish into the animal, and there was a whole problem what to do with it when they came to the Holy Temple. And they finally many of the Kohanim there said, "Well, let's do it, because if we don't offer the sacrifice, we're going to be in trouble with the Romans. Maybe to make an exception." But the head of the court says, "No, I don't want people to think that we could go ahead and offer blemished animals as a sacrifice." And that was one of the causes for the destruction of the Holy Temple. So you got to be very careful in what's said and maybe sometimes you could make it a change, an exception to the rule. But again, you got to be extremely careful. It's not so simple to be a leader. Okay, yeah. And that's why in Mishnah Yud, it says, be very careful when it comes to be too friendly with the Romans, because you might go ahead and overlook something and say it's okay when it's not okay. And the case at point was by the Kamsa case. That's always the case brought down in the Gemara about that was one of the reasons that brought to the destruction of the Holy Temple, because he did not offer the sacrifice because it was a blemish on the animal. Blemish of the animal was on, I think, the lip. And for the Romans, that's not considered a blemish, but for us, it was a blemish. And they said not to offer it. And then that only infuriated the Romans against the Jews. So it was some difficult times. So that's why over here, the devices don't get too close to the Romans at that time. Yeah.
No, Rabbi.
Yeah.
It comes in Bar Kamsa. That's one of the few things you're allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av.
Yeah, that's the thing we learned on Tisha B'Av. That was one of the things that brought about the destruction of the Holy Temple. And also other things, the sinat chinam, they had hatred for one another. There wasn't this unity of love and devotion. And I think Rav Kook one time said that in order to bring Mashiach, we have to change it around. Instead of having sinat chinam, having hatred, we must love everybody, even if there's no reason to do so. Ahavat chinam. So that's what Rav Kook said, and I think he is right. We have to try to love everyone. I know it's not easy, but you have to try. All right, let's finish. Let's stop here. Yeah, let's hear.
So how did they judge? They said there was hatred. Even in the Midbar, in the 40 years, the Jews were fighting with each other.
Yeah, you're right. Or bad report. You're right. You see that. Look, when they went ahead and they were sent out to see what Eretz Yisrael was. 10 of them came back with evil reports. The true around Kolik came out with a good report, and the people followed the majority, and they didn't want to go. How could you take us out of Egypt? Even called at that time, they said the land of milk and honey. They're referring to Egypt.
Right.
How could you do that, Moshe? Yeah, of course. It's not easy.
So with the Meraglim, there were 10 Meraglim. They said they were the leaders in all the tribes, right?
Right. Yeah, they were very distinguished people.
Right.
Right.
So how come there weren't 11?
Why, there are 12 tribes.
Right. So there were 10. So saying that the Levites weren't going to go, how come there weren't 11?
Levi was a tribe. I suppose.
Right. That's right. So that makes 11. And who's the other one that didn't go?
He mentions 12. So I suppose the Levites were included the Kohanim also, but
that's one tribe. So who didn't go?
Who did what?
Who else didn't go? The Levites didn't go, and who else didn't go?
I don't know.
No, we had 12, but 2 said
12.
No, only 10 Meraglim went.
No, you had 12 altogether.
Oh,
2
and
came back with a good.
And then 2 were Caleb and
Yeah. Yeshua Caleb came back with a good report, but those 10, they sided with the 10. And they were unfortunately they didn't want to go to Israel. Some commentators suggest that the 10 didn't want to go into Israel because they felt it's a totally different life, and maybe they would not be appointed anymore as the leaders of their tribe. In the desert, it was perfect. Everything was given to them and all that. They were respected as the leaders. To go into Israel and a natural life will take place, they wouldn't be accepted, and they would lose their position. So many said that's why they talked evil against the land of Israel.
I read one that they would go into Israel and they would have to work all day. They wouldn't have time to study Torah.
It could be, yeah. But that's another problem. Yeah. It would be a different style of life. so that they were afraid to enter Israel. At least that was some commentators say that. Yeah.
So sinners,
Yeah, that's what happened.
it's a permanent condition.
Yeah, it's not easy. In fact, Moshe Rabbeinu, he was, if you look carefully in the last week's Parsha, look carefully, you'll see that God did not command Moshe to send out spies. If you look carefully, he said, Shlach, if you so desire, because if people wanted it, all right, I'm telling you that it's good. But Moshe felt, well, you want to side with the people. Maybe they have to see the land. And he made a mistake. Okay, you can't undo it, but it was a mistake on Moshe Rabbeinu's part. He had the permission. God said to him, if you want to do it, fine, but you don't have, I'm telling you it's a good land. And if you remember, when the first encounter that Moshe had with God at the burning bush, he tells him that I'm going to take you out of Egypt and bring you to the land flowing with milk and honey. A spacious land, a beautiful land. They should have had that faith to believe it. But the people did. And Moshe Rabbeinu felt maybe they should see it for themselves and they'll believe it. But it didn't turn out the way he wanted it. And then they had to spend 40 years in the desert before they entered the land. Okay. Okay, Shabbat Shalom. And I think next week will be the last 2 sessions. It's the last week of June, I think. And we'll end the next 2 more classes for next week on Tuesday afternoon and Thursday evening. Anyway, Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful Shabbat.
Shabbat
Feel
Shalom.
good. And keep
Thank
safe.
you, Rabbi. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, I wanted to.